Hey everyone, before we get into the meat of the video, I should give you all a small content warning. In this video, I'm going to talk about suicide. In fact, I'm going to approach the topic quite heavily. If that is something you would rather not hear about, please stop the video now. Thank you and take care of yourselves. The story of the Broken and the Lost Ones is, for me at least, one of my favorites in Warcraft lore, and it's perhaps best told in the short story Unbroken by Mickey Nielsen, whose main character is Nobundo, which I would definitely recommend to everyone if you haven't read it. In this video, I'm going to talk about a female Broken. Now, to get a technicality out of the way, there are no female Broken models in the game. The model looks like this, it's unfinished. There are though some pieces of artwork of female Broken which I will put on screen right now for reference's sake. Because of all of this, I'm just going to use the female Draenei model to represent the character I'm going to talk about, even though it may not be accurate at all points of the story. So, the minor character that I want to feature in this video is the Draenei called Corin, one of the supporting characters in the Unbroken short story. Corin, like the main character Nobundo, is also one of the survivors of the Orcish assault on Shattrath City, though she was in a different group at the time. Like Nobundo, she and her group were also afflicted with the red mist the orcs used in their attack, and she was also traumatized by the Battle of Shattrath. She was originally a civilian, hidden away along with several others and a few Vindicators. Her original group was attacked by the orcs, and the only ones who survived the events of Shattrath were her, two of the Vindicators, and Akama, who inhaled so much of the red mist that he spent months, possibly years, in a coma. As most of you may know, that red mist was a fel-infused version of the red pox disease, used by the orcs as a bioweapon during the assault on Shattrath City. While its immediate effects on the Draenei included things like nausea, losing consciousness, and cutting them off from the light permanently, over the long term it mutates them, afflicting their ability to think properly and turning them into the Broken, and possibly even worse, into the savage Lost Ones. Throughout the story, Corin serves as an indicator of the progression of the Broken transformation. Through Nobundo's eyes, we see her tail growing shorter, her hooves falling off, her limbs swell, etc. Transformations that Nobundo also experiences. She is more physically affected than Nobundo. She is in constant pain from the transformation to the point that it sometimes just causes her to thrash about madly. To quote, "I want to die, I just want to die, I want the pain gone," before she had to be restrained by the Draenei healer. Eventually, the other unafflicted Draenei, not knowing if the Broken condition was contagious or if their separation from the light was perhaps some sort of punishment from them, chose to, well, exile them, to have the Broken live in separate camps from the unafflicted. Corin is one of the Broken most dismayed by this turn of events. Over time, as the Broken transformation continues, her thinking also becomes more sluggish, like the other Broken. At one point, while Nobundo was off on one of his daily prayers to the light, she approached him and sat next to him on one of the cliffs dotting Draenor. After giving him the news that the orcs were regrouping under the leadership of one of the ones who make the dark magic, Ner'zhul at the time, she became lost in thought. She asked Nobundo what he thought would happen if she took a few more steps off the cliff. After he said that she would fall, she confessed that while, yes, her body would fall, she sometimes thought that her spirit would fly, would soar. Over time as well, the other Broken who were in Corin's group continued to degenerate, and both turned into lost ones and disappeared. She had never really bonded with the other Broken in the camp besides Nobundo, and the loss of her last few companions obviously pained her. Eventually, one day, Nobundo woke up and learned from one of the newer Broken in the camp that Corin had left and that she said she was going to soar. He rushed as fast as he could to the mountain cliff I mentioned before and saw Corin on the ledge. He yelled at her to stop. To quote from the short story, she looked back, offered the slightest hint of a smile, then turned and pitched forward silently, disappearing into a thick cloud of steam. Nobundo reached the edge and glanced over, seeing nothing but that faint glow far, far below. And from that point on, whenever Nobundo had nightmares about the women he could not save in Shatrath City, Korin was now among them. Though her actual story is brief, needless to say, as someone who has had her own suicidal thoughts, I resonated with Korin's story and her words, though obviously I didn't have it as bad as she did. The leitmotif, especially of while her body would fall, she thought her spirit would soar, I thought was especially telling. Now, to some extent you can certainly attribute her decision to the mental sluggishness she experienced as a broken, but I think it mostly came from her own personal grief and the physical pain she constantly experienced, and from a feeling of constantly feeling beaten down, like life would just get worse and worse. I should note though that Nobundo's reaction throughout the story following this event also speaks of the pain and suffering of the people who have had friends or relatives commit suicide. Nobundo also talks about how she did that in order to not become like the lost ones, and considers that perhaps she had found the only way out. Almost immediately afterwards, the elemental spirits begin speaking to him, eventually reigniting his hope for the future. At the end of the day, while it's done fairly briefly, I think the Unbroken short story tackles the topic of suicide fairly well through the character of Korin, as well as the grief of the friends and family of the person committing suicide through Nobundo. Alright, thank you all very much for watching and listening to me. This was a pretty heavy subject to handle and I hope I didn't step on any toes, so to say. Take care of yourselves and I will see you all next time.